tout le monde, ravie d'être
Okay, hi everyone. I'm happy to be here with you for the second edition of Babelica, first day. Thank you for joining us from Spain, England, Cameroon, Mali, Morocco, and thank you to the interpreters as well, who are going to have to share the ideas that we are going to discuss this afternoon. So I hope you all understood how it works. Quick reminder, the session is going to be recorded, and if you don't want to appear on it, you can turn your camera off. So we're going to talk about the way that we can give new value to intellectual work. When we thought about this workshop, we wanted to think collectively, not only about the criteria that made intellectual work precarious. It can be piracy, neoliberal pressure, or the lack of public reading policies. But we thought that within the alliance of independent publishers and the people we discuss with on a daily basis, there are several possible solutions that are being tried and carried on in terms of construction. And this is where I want to lead you today. This is what I want us to think about. And I want to invite you to contribute with your own ideas. This workshop is very special to me when we see the disaster that happened in Morocco a few days ago. And I think that intellectual work is not a luxury. You all share this idea probably, but it's an urgency for all of us today. 500 schools were damaged. Thousands of kids cannot go to school, cannot have access to books. And I hope it's temporary. I hope it's as short as possible, but they do not have the possibility to construct themselves intellectually. And this is why this workshop has a special meaning to me. And this is what I wanted to add at the beginning. So with us today, we have Javier López Alos, who's a Spanish philosopher based in Spain. He's the author um, of two book, The Critics of the Precarious Reason, that was recently translated into French, and El Intelectual Plebeyo. And we invited him to discuss with us the proposals that we can do to respond to the precarious intellectual work. In addition to that, we have Azadeh Parsapour, founder of Nogam Editions, an Iranian publishing house in exile in London, and one of the initiators of the Tehran Book Fair Uncensored, so fighting against censorship of the Iranian regime. We have Ibrahima Aya, founder of the Tombouctou's edition, and he founded 15 years ago the Rentrée littéraire du Mali. Then we have Ange Mbele in Cameroon. She's the founder of Le Grand Vide-Grenier, and she does important work in Cameroon and other countries in the region to bring African books to readers. And last but not least, we also have Francisca Munoz, founder of Edición Sacabana in Chile, and she's also a member of the Editoriales de Chile publishing collective. Also, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. This workshop is recorded, but we hope that our exchanges can lead to a written contribution that would be published in the Apulé Journal. Obviously, all of this will be written down by myself, and I will submit it to you for your own approval. You're free to not contribute, but if you want to contribute, it would be amazing if you could introduce yourself and take part into this workshop. I'm sorry, I'm just going to take the floor for a second. Please do not talk too fast um, for our interpreters and for the workshop to be sustainable as well.
déroulé suivant. On va d'abord
Very
donner
good. So we will work this way. First,
we will have Javier Lopez Alos telling us what the importance of books is and what the importance of reading is. How do we want to live, and what does this have to do with books? After Javier speaks, we will have 4 times of 15 minutes each, with first a testimony and then a time to share together about what has to be said. So first, Azadeh Parsapo will talk to us about censorship and how to avoid it. Ibrahima Aya on how to make the literary domain alive. Then Ange on economic creation, and then Francisca Munoz. So this will be very much a collaborative work. You will see the drive that we will share in the chat, and we will also share our screen during these times of exchanges. So now, Javier, the floor is yours. You will talk to us about work and the link with books and the way we want to live.
Thank you very much, Kenza. Thank you to the International Alliance of Independent Publishers and everybody who's been committed in the organization of Babelica. Thanks to Laurence and Kenza for the invitation. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your interest. I'd also like to thank the interpreters, and obviously, I'd also like to send a warm greeting from Spain to the people in Morocco. Kenza has perfectly explained the situation, and there's no need for me to say it again, but the context is very urgent, and it is a very dramatic situation, the one they are currently experiencing. For me, it is a pleasure to be here and be able to listen to different voices, stories, and experiences coming from other parts of the world. They offer us different perspectives. They offer me different perspectives to the ones I may have here from Spain. I believe that we are linked by many different aspects, and before coming here, I was thinking about the starting points that we have, but there's something in common. The concern that we have when we see unfairness and the intellectual work. This unfairness is translated in different ways in different countries, and I believe this is important to highlight. For example, during the presentation, when you were talking about the different topics we're going to discuss later on, we can see very clearly that there is a diversity of situations that might be affected by abuse, injustice, precarity, absence of good working conditions. But obviously, there's a specific concern in every single country. And I think it is important to acknowledge that. And for me, I like to think about it as a specific task. For example, specifically from countries such as Spain, countries where we enjoy economic comfort in spite of all the problems we are experiencing, obviously. But thanks to that good economic situation, sometimes we have difficulties to acknowledge other dimensions when it comes to precarious work. So I believe that all that are here today as publishers, we have something in common. in common. We are joined by the working level of being publishers and the call to action when it comes to giving a new value to our work. So in the in this presentation, I'd like to express some arguments that show this concern on the intellectual work. But I'd like to give a different approach, something different to the approach that everybody here is um, devoted to intellectual work. So it's not only a individual concern that we have. Obviously, we want to have a bigger social recognition of our work. Obviously, we are here because of that, right? Because we want to promote that. And that's a very legitimate approach, but it's not something specific or limited to the intellectual work. When we fight to defend dignity and good working conditions, I believe that we all have to be on the same boat. And specifically, intellectual work is focused on that to move from the individual concerns to the collective concerns, to understand what the problem is and to see how we can go beyond an individual problem, to create the ability to build stories, narratives, representations to explain how the world works, but also the possible solutions. So this is basically one of the tasks of the cultural world. So in the intellectual work, we are not only concerned about this only because it affects our work. In fact, sometimes we work intellectually because we are concerned about others, about the collectiveness. So we are concerned enough in order to devote our energy, our time, our economic resources to fight for the common good and to study it, to understand what is happening and to try to disseminate those ideas to other agents because we believe that these are important topics. That's why I think the revaluation of intellectual work is not only limited to the economic aspect. So the topic cannot be limited to thinking, how does this affect me individually? If we want to give a new value to our work, we have to understand how new values are given to our work and how we are exploited or how we exploit ourselves due to the capitalist society and system that obliges us to generate richness, right? So everything that doesn't create income, a positive income, something that doesn't create an asset is not important, right? That seems to be the only criterion that is taking place when we talk about value of work. So now talking about the book perspective and the book industry. One of the main um, positive things about our industry is the different catalogs that we have over there. They are diverse enough to create economic income, but they go beyond that because they devote their work to other factors. Now, if we adopt the author's perspective, they want to write about what they believe is fair, and I think this is a very important perspective. They have to write freely without bearing into account economic success. They need to write without fearing if their book is going to generate good income or not. So I think writing in freedom implies the possibility to write without feeling that you are risking your economic future. If you follow that logic, if you write while you feel that your future is at risk or the feasibility of your intellectual project is at risk, it is very difficult to transmit your ideas because then that idea is written in every page. So it's the idea that the writers write because they want to avoid any future economic problem, right? And they want to avoid any future obstacles that they may face. So it's writing with fear. And I believe that that idea of protecting one's business implies that we are fooled by the logic of the entrepreneurship, right? Or the writer as an entrepreneur. And I believe that one con good contribution of entrepreneurs to culture and to the economic culture in the last few years is precisely that. I believe one of the best contributions of the intellectual work is showing practical and theoretical light to these aspects. I'd like to talk about specific experiences later on. I just wanted to introduce this theory very briefly. So it's a paradigm of the entrepreneur. We have the idea of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is a person that sees himself as independent and who's competing with their colleagues. And their value is given by the amount of money they can create. So we talk about writers, and we cannot talk about writers and their works without talking about readers. In this sense, I'm very interested by a document regarding the ecology of writing. I'm not going to go into much details, but this is a very important piece of work. It is about reading and how the experience of reading has changed during the last couple of years due to the technological experience. We all know that we read now in different platforms at different times, but for me, it's interesting to understand how reading is now guided by the logic of production. As readers, we oblige ourselves to produce more, to read more. It's like if we were embedded in a productivist consumerism, and this remembers us to the field of obligations. We have to read because we have to pay a debt. We have a pile of books pending and we have to finish that pile of book. And sometimes we even work as accountants because we think at the end of the day, okay, today I've read so many pages. So it's as if we were trying to improve our performance when we are reading. So this, in my opinion, conditions the experience we have while reading, and it also conditions the how and the what. In this framework, between reading as an obligation and reading as a debt, this also leads us to a situation in which we rethink what it's a debt and what we have to do. And we start also to compete with other readers. We want to distinguish ourselves and we don't want to be left behind. So in this sense, the difference between big and small cultural producers are bigger and bigger. This can be applied to publishing companies, publishing houses, but also to writers, to authors. These differences do not imply heterogeneity. Sometimes It's quite the opposite. Sometimes the bigger the gap is, the more opposite the consequence is. And sometimes everything that's different is left behind because we are obliged to live or experience our lives in a very similar way. So defending biodiversity has to be linked to defending the life conditions that make it possible, reading, writing, etc. And in order to achieve that, we have to reflect about living conditions, not only the living conditions of intellectual workers, but of everybody, because intellectual workers and intellectual life, which is the life of everybody who's interested in an intellectual work, that life has to go beyond work. It doesn't have to be only a job. It has to be a situation in which we have time and the tools to continue creating it beyond that. And of course, it is a job. And when it becomes a job, it has to be a job with good working conditions. But it has to go beyond that. It has to be we have to get to a situation in which we can freely think about intellectual work beyond a job. And for that, we need a framework. We need to develop a framework in which it is easier to think and to transmit and understand what other people want to say. And I'm going to finish it by saying the following thing. I believe we have to rethink the relation we have to the activities we do. We consider that they are important, and they are important not only because we devote our time to them, we do them, we carry out them because we think that they are important for me, but they are also interesting to everybody, and everybody can enjoy them. So in order for others to appreciate these activities and to give them social value, and in order for us to obtain a good retribution for that, we need to change the ways we produce and the ways we feel the motivation to work. We need to abandon that logic of benefit and economic production. That's all for the time being. I don't want to extend, I don't want to consume much more time because I think I'm at the end of the time that allotted to me. So obviously, I'm open to listen to your comments later on. Thank you.
Kenza, are you there?
Beaucoup.
Thank
Allô,
you
allô?
very much, Javier. Yes, it's okay. We can hear you, Kenza. Go ahead.
Ouais, c'est bon, je vous ai retrouvé. Vous m'entendez?
Okay, it's okay. I can see you now. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Go ahead. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Javier, for this presentation that invites us to break away from the productivity paradigm first.
On échange.
We should also focus on exchanges, but we're not going to discuss right away the content of what you've just shared. What I suggest is that we come back to it later because you will be able to share the concluding remarks and we will now go deeper in our reflection with our four speakers. So I'm going to give the floor to Azadeh Parsapour to present to us the work that she does and explain to us why defy censorship is more important today than ever. Azadeh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kenza. My name is Azadeh and I run No Gum Publishing. We are based in the UK.
Je t'interromps une seconde pour te dire que là,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I'm going to take the timekeeper role, which I don't very like, but you have 5 minutes for your intervention.
Okay, thank you. I run No Gum Publishing based in the UK. I am a Persian publisher, and the reason that I work in the UK is because we publish the books that cannot be published inside the country because of the censorship. I'm here to talk briefly about a book fair, an annual book fair that we have every year in May. Not just No Gum, but all of the Persian Iranian publishers in exile across the world, in the US and Europe. But before that, I just want to start with the fact that the situation in Iran politically is worse than ever. And we started this book fair in 2016, but many of you might know that last Saturday was the anniversary of the death of Mahsa Jina Amini, a 22-year-old girl that died in the custody of moral police in Tehran. And then after that, widespread protest sparked across Iran. And since then, hundreds of people, children, including children, were killed. Thousands of people were in prison, tortured. And one of the things that we, witnessed and still it's happening is arresting not just people protesting, not just a protester, but also everyone who writes about it, everyone who make an artwork about it, artists, everyone who want to document it. So the censorship and the restriction are now worse than ever. And I just want to look at what we do in this context. I just start what I had in mind for this session. There are a number of Iranian publishers, as I said, across the world, and they are publishing literature, fiction, nonfiction, history, and human science outside the country. And the reason, as I said, is the censorship since 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. And there are unlimited topics you cannot talk about. There are numerous words that you cannot write in your book. And there is a really long list of blacklisted authors that they don't even read it. They just announce it unpublishable because of the name of the author. So if we look at Iranian or Persian speaker diaspora in the world, since 1979, millions of Iranians left Iran. Some of them fled for their lives and took political or social asylum in other countries, and many immigrated for a better life in the UK, US, Australia, around the world. Among them are many authors, translators, artists, and also publishers. These publishers defy the increasing censorship by publishing works by authors, not just exiled authors, but also authors inside Iran. In 2016, No Gum Publishing, my publishing, founded a book fair called Tehran Book Fair Uncensored. We started it in London. The first year was only in London with 8 publishers, Persian publishers, but from the next year, all these Persian publishers gather and collectively transform it to a tour. So now we have this in many cities and countries. It coincides with the real Tehran Book Fair in Iran. So it's like a symbolic act. Since then, this book fair grown, and we have it almost every May, June. It depends on what date is in Tehran. They're just running it. And we bring physical books to Persian speakers, mostly Iranians, but not limited to Iranians. Also, Persian speakers from Afghanistan or Tajikistan that live abroad. When you publish books in a language other than a language that is spoken in your country and you're living for like a scattered audience around the world, you know it's not financially viable. Our first aim is to save the literature and the history of country and its people, because the state has been trying to rewrite the history as they wish and perish our culture and our identity. Our mission is to support whoever has the courage to document and write the stories for the generations to come. In this book fair, we travel around the world by car, by train, by plane, to different destinations, set up our stalls, and present the books, talk about them. We have book launches, lectures, Q&A with author if the author lives outside Iran. And we try to record and stream them digitally also, so it can play as a bridge from outside Iran to inside Iran, so the people inside Iran also know what is being published, what discussions are going on. And some of the publishers, including mine, Nogam, for each book we publish for print edition, we have a free ebook also that we put on our platform, on our website, so Iranian inside Iran can just freely download it and read it. And so one month a year, we travel and we try to take these books to readers, helping them to rediscover what they have been denied in their homeland. And we introduce new voices, new talents, and new stories. So we celebrate diversity in our work. In 2023, some of these publishers that travel, I think they just drove 8,000 kilometers around Europe to go city to city to just put up this book fair. And this work is not a business to us, actually. It's not a business at all. I mean, we all have financial problems, but we don't care. And I need to mention and emphasize that even the authors that work for us, with us, and they give us their manuscript, they want their books to be published, they don't really expect any money. I mean, there is like a small amount of income for every book, because if you compare the audience and readership inside the country or just outside the country, it's really, the print run is really low, and they don't expect money. They want the books out. They want their voices to be heard. So it is more than like advocacy than business, but well, we try our best to showcase their work. And for us, it is a vital cultural advocacy. It is defending freedom of speech and freedom to print and publish. For us, this publishing is defiance of an authoritarian regime. And I want to finish with a quote that one of my dear friends and writers, Farhad Guran, told me when we were like recording a podcast for our publishing. And he said he lives in Iran And he said, it's what you're doing, not just me, all these Persian publishers and Iranian publishers and all other groups, even underground groups, you know, in Iran. It's just creating a space that we can dream of writing. We can be able, because we know that writing doesn't start on the paper, doesn't start on the screen or a Word document. It starts in their mind. And with that pressure that they have and they have to endure inside Iran, what we can do can just create this space for them to dream of writing it and to just enable them to write and not forget that how much it is important to have these stories and have books. Thank you. Kenta, I'm done.
Merci beaucoup, Azadeh.
Thank you very much, Azadeh, for your testimony that is quite admirable. I wanted to share with you my admiration for this huge work. And maybe to start the discussion, could you tell us how many people you can reach during those book fairs? And also, how are diaspora children appropriating this culture thanks to you, their culture?
I think last year we could, in the book fair, we had like 5,000 or 6,000 people coming to these book fairs collectively in different cities. But never forget that we stream all these programs. So people around the Iranian and Persian speakers around the world, including Iran, can watch them. So they are participating also. And I don't have that data, but I have the physical data that is around 5,000 or 6,000. And what you said about next generation children, I think we are new about that because many of these publishers that started work, they focused on not children books. So they started with human science, history, and political books. And then the newer generation of publishers started publishing fiction. For example, my publishing house is publishing more fiction in compared to nonfiction. And then in 2020, I started a children sector because I found out that families come and they have like second generation, third generation of Iranians living abroad, and they need their culture and their language passed on to their children. And now a couple of publishers started experiencing and experimenting, and we have some first or second generation
Merci
writers.
beaucoup, Azadeh.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, you can go on.
No, I just wanted to know not just publishers, but also some of the authors that are living abroad. They are starting to write in the language of the country, but they are writing for the second or third generation. So the stories are from our region, are from Iran, are from culture, but in other languages. So not only this generation can share and know and educate themselves, but also we can share them with the world, with the country that we live in. So that's I think the mission that we can hope for a better future for this generation.
On formule ce souhait avec toi. Merci beaucoup,
And we
Azadeh.
share that mission and that wish with you. Thank you very much. And keep the image to create a space to dream and to make possible the sharing of ideas. And I would like to open the discussion on other experiences that you would like to share about the existence or making the existence of other voices possible. Who would like to intervene, share a comment, an experience? Would someone like to react to what Azadeh just shared?
I'd like to say something if that's okay. I'd like to come back to the point about Iranian children, specifically Iranian that are born from the diaspora, so that are born outside of Iran, and which parents struggle to share their culture and languages with. And the answer to that was, books that are written not in Farsi or Persian. I was wondering, are there books that are adapted to children that are born in Iran now, so that are born into this regime? Is there like literature and books that are catered for them? Because I feel like in a lot of conversation, it feels like children of the diaspora take a lot of room, and it feels like it leaves like very little to the children that are born into the home country. Thank you.
I think what we have done for the like children born in diaspora, Iranian diaspora, is not enough and hasn't been enough. But now there are a new wave of publishers, children publishers or children writers specifically, that they are producing and publishing content and books targeting this audience. So I will be happy to share more information with you later, or give you some links and names if you like.
Yes, actually, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres
Okay, are there other interventions or inputs? I just wanted to remind you that you also have the Google Drive if you want to share ideas on there as well. If you prefer, we continue on with the other testimonies and then we keep the discussion time for the end. That's also a possibility. Laurence, what do you think? Yes, that's entirely possible indeed, Kenza.
D'accord, alors
Okay, then I think we can move forward and move on with the other testimonies. We can sum up the main ideas and then discuss them at the end of the session. So I will now invite Ibrahima Aya to take the floor. The transition is perfect because Azadeh talked about creating a space for imagination, and that's precisely what you've been doing for 15 years now, since 2008. La rentrée littéraire du Mali, to allow for the creation of the African literary field. And well, the floor is yours.
Bonjour Kenza, bonjour
Good morning, Kenza. Hi, everyone. Hi to all the people with us today. Thank you for the speakers today, and I must say that I'm really grateful for being here today for our debates. Thank you also to the Alliance of Independent Publisher. I think that this work is important, and now I will be able to answer your question. What are autonomous thought spaces on literary work and how to create them? Well, I will maybe react to what Azadeh has just said, because I will talk about censorship, what I will talk about is actually a form, another shape that censorship takes, which is externalization of speeches and of stories when we talk about the literary season in Mali. So what is this all about? I will go into further details, and I will start by saying that the literary season in Mali was created in 2008. This was something that was done by the publishing house I created in Tombouctou with a friend of mine who's called Idrissa. And this event was created in 2008 on the basis of a thing we had seen. What was it? Well, we acknowledged that Africa is a place where many cultural production are produced from the north, and we wanted to change this matter of this state of affairs. And so we thought, let us create an event that's really African. Let us create the possibility of telling new stories. So how can we share a new space for societal debates, for imaginative writing and creation that really echoes what is important for African people? So this was really the idea behind our work. We wanted to make sure that we owned our right to tell the world from an African point of view. This is a way of having our own narrative. We need to take ownership of our narrative. And we need to do this through the way that we share the narratives, but also the way we tell it, the way we tell the story. Because what we see today is that other people have taken the have actually stolen the brains of Africa. They have tried to think instead of African people. And this is what I call externalization of stories and narratives. So for us, what is at stake is to get out of this very old heritage that we got from history. We want to get out of a process that leaves Africa only as a producer of raw material and provider of raw material, and not a continent in itself. So to get out of this history, we need to create our narratives. We need to make sure that the voice of African people is heard, that they can divide their own needs. So this is about ownership. We all are humans. We believe in humanism. But everyone is supposed to talk about the human condition from the basis of his material conditions and from it, his or her own point of view. So the human condition of African people is not the same as others. So that's really the heart of our debates today. Why would we not have the right to tell our own stories? Here, we're not saying that others can't have a point of view on Africa, and that they can't produce narratives about Africa. No, we say that Africa should also be able to create narratives about Africa and the rest of the world. And our event, the literary season, does not want to create an official narrative for the African continent. No, it's a space that is willing to be open, that really is about being a free expression space for anyone that wants to tell their stories. And this is really the raison d'etre of this event. We want to make sure to integrate all the spaces of book production in Africa, but also to create this space to celebrate the intellectual culture of the continent through the African authors, among others. And we do this every year with authors from Africa, of course, and from elsewhere in the world. And despite the current context that you're very well aware of, we keep on organizing this event that next year will have been created since 14 years ago. And this is really about Africa and about living together. Our event will happen in February 2024, also next year. So this is some words about our event. Why did we want to create it? What's the spirit of this event? What does it mean for us? And to sum things up, I will tell you our motto. Africa tells what it is about to the rest of the world, herself. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Ibrahima. Thank you.
Kenza, on t'entend
Ima?
plus.
Kenza, we can't hear you anymore.
Je vous entends pas.
Ouais, Kenza, peux-tu
I'm
répéter?
sorry, we can't hear you. Yeah, Kenza, we lost connection with you for a few seconds.
Kenza.
Kenza?
On attend que Kenza revienne.
We're waiting for Kenza to be back with us.
Non, ça coupe Kenza. On attend que tu
No,
reviennes.
we can't hear you, Kenza.
Et je voulais te demander comment cette recherche pour rétablir
I can't hear you, Kenza.
Est-ce que tu peux juste reformuler ta question?
Kenza, can you maybe rephrase what you said?
les imaginaires, est-ce que c'est pour toi unique du médiatique
Est-ce que vous pouvez parler un peu plus
au-delà
fort? Je
d'une
vous entends pas.
position
I
philosophique?
can't hear you very well, Kenza.
En fait, je vous entends pas bien. Est-ce que vous
I'm sorry, I can't hear you well.
Alors, on va attendre que Kenza, elle a un petit souci de connexion, que Kenza revienne.
We'll wait for Kenza to be back. She's got a little internet issue apparently. I see that she's coming back.
Kenza arrive, Ibrahima.
Ok, si
Allô?
elle peut parler un peu plus fort, je n'entendais rien du tout.
Oui.
Yeah, I wasn't able to hear her. Yes, Kenza, we are listening to you now. Can you ask your question again? Yes, sorry for this appalling internet connection. So, no, you weren't able to hear me, right? No, we weren't.
Peux-tu reformuler ta question, Kenza?
Can you ask again?
Kenza. Ce sont les aléas du direct et du Zoom.
Yeah, that's typical Zoom situation, unfortunately. Okay, I think I'm back. Yeah, you need to ask again because we weren't able to hear you.
Oui, désolée.
Yes, sorry about that. So my question was as follows. My question to Ibrahima. So this will of finding the balance back.
Moi, j'entends, par exemple, Ibrahima, pour le coup.
No, I'm able to hear Ibrahima, so the problem might be from you. I come from you.
Est-ce que là, vous m'entendez?
Oui. Ibrahima, est-ce que tu entends Kenza?
Ibrahima, can you hear Kenza?
Ma question.
Kenza, Ibrahima.
Non, 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 pas du tout. Je t'entends toi, mais je l'entends pas.
No, I hear
Je
you,
l'entends,
but
Kenza.
I can't hear
Alors,
Kenza.
je te dis la question si tu peux la répéter.
So I will
C'est
ask
ma
the
question était
question. My
comment
question is as
aujourd'hui,
follows.
dans cette démarche décoloniale pour rétablir
How,
une
with the
équilibre de
decolonial
l'organisation
way of
régionale,
working,
est-ce que
to find back a balance
l'essentiel
in
est économique? Est-ce que c'est
um,
un événement médiatique?
imagination?
Quel est
Is
son
it about
positionnement sur
economy?
les
Is
enjeux?
it about media? Is it about philosophy?
En fait, il faudrait que tu me laisses écouter la question. Je vais essayer de la reformuler, d'accord? Ok? J'écoute Kenza et j'essaie de te reformuler la question, d'accord?
Alors, dans cette démarche décoloniale pour rétablir un
So with
équilibre
this decolonial approach to try and find back a balance in
est-ce que l'important c'est l'aspect
imagination,
économique, c'est
what
l'aspect
is
médiatique
most
ou c'est le
important? Is
positionnement
it
sur le
about the
capital
economy? Is it
mondial?
about philosophy? Or is it about media?
Alors, Ibrahima, tu m'entends? Je vais te reformuler la question. Dans cette démarche
Okay, Ibrahim, I will try to rephrase for you. So with this decolonial approach that you have with your event,
dans l'expression des
in order
imaginaires,
to
est-ce que
rebalance
l'important est-il
imagination,
un enjeu
what do you mostly work on? Is it about economy? Is it about media or
Je pense
philosophy?
que les trois sont liés. Quand je parle
Well, I
d'externalisation,
think that all these
prenons le
aspects
fait
matter.
que
When I talk about
le manuscrit
externalization of
est une matière
narratives,
première. Donc la
we've got
matière
to think about the fact
c'est
that
une matière
literary
première
production
très
is,
intrinsèque
in a way, a raw
et c'est
material.
aussi une
So
ressource.
here it's
Donc
about the economy.
c'est
A
aussi
book
ça en termes
is a
économiques,
sort
c'est
of
la production
material.
d'un produit. Et donc en fait
So we
ici
need to be able to
la
produce
question
it in
est
any case.
économique.
So here's it's a matter of economy.
Donc ça veut dire que ça change les rapports.
In other words,
Des rapports
if
asymétriques.
we produce
Donc en fait,
books,
voilà,
the balances will be
nous
different.
sommes
And today,
seulement,
the
non
relationships we
seulement nous
have
avons
are
des intéressés,
asymmetrical.
mais consommateurs de quelque chose qui est
We are
aussi
consumers when we try to access these
à la fois
cultural
bienvenu pour
goods.
nous, mais qui n'alimente pas notre
But
économie.
if we've got an ethical
Et donc, en fin de
good,
compte, qui ne crée pas de la valeur
it will
ajoutée sur
give
notre
added value
économie.
to our economy,
Et donc, en
which
fait, parce
most books
qu'elle
that we
participe
consume today in Africa do not.
à l'enrichissement d'une autre filière. Donc,
And
même
so
si
we
la
are
filière
actually
n'est pas
giving money
produite
away
par
when
cette
we buy
filière.
books that aren't produced in
Donc,
Africa.
voilà, et
We are
sur
making
ce
other
point de
people
vue, c'est une
richer.
question économique
So
importante.
yes, it is an
Effectivement, il y a
economic
la question
question, of
également
course.
aussi, la question même de
It is also
l'authentificité qui est... Parce qu'en fin
a
de compte, les
matter of
livres, c'est
other
aussi la liberté
aspects
de raconter.
because books are about the freedom to narrate
De
things.
raconter, et ça veut dire aussi que si, et c'est là je parlais de censure
And
intellectuelle, parce que
here I was
les
talking
moyens
about
numériques,
censorship.
en fait,
And you see that
l'environnement
censorship
informatique
is not
que
always
ne favorise pas
working and
le
always working in a
médiatisme
visible way.
et la capacité de capter
Sometimes
toute
censorship is more
l'information
insidious.
de là. Et donc finalement,
The sound
à
of
la
the
fois le
speaker
message
cuts for a moment.
même que les
The
supports
interpreter is sorry about
numériques
that.
le portent
And so
dépendent
the
de
means through
notre
which we
environnement.
tell our stories
Et ça veut dire
depend
que
very much
on
rely
est
upon
dépossédé de la
our
possibilité
environment.
d'agir sur cet environnement. Et
So
donc d'agir même sur
we
soi
are
aussi.
indeed
Et
unable
la
to
réponse,
act alone on our
et donc
environment
la réponse c'est de dire, OK,
and to act alone on
euh,
those
la question
issue
n'est
of
pas de dire que
narrative
les autres
reframing.
n'ont pas le droit de porter
So the idea here
aussi
is not to
économiquement
say that others are not
une
legitimate
référence,
to tell a story
mais
about
simplement que
Africa.
oui,
It's
il
rather
faut
to say that it
donner
is
la responsabilité
important
de créer un autre
that
environnement
Africans are able to take
qui
ownership and that
sera
we
leur
need to
donner la
foster
possibilité
another
et la
environment
capacité de
for more
porter l'histoire à
freedom
partir de,
for African actors,
de,
for more
de notre
ability to
identité
produce
à
narratives
partir de
from
nos
the
pays.
point of view of
Donc
our
oui,
continents and of our different
oui,
African
bien sûr,
countries.
derrière, voilà, derrière l'enjeu peut-être politique, il y a bien sûr
So
l'aspect
yes, there is
économique
also a
et l'enjeu
policy question
social, bien sûr.
to be
Parce qu'en
asked,
fait,
and
le but
also
n'est pas de dire
it's a
forcément que
matter of
je
social
constate que
ownership
oui,
and
il y a
social
telle ou telle
norms.
posture. Non, c'est juste la question de la plus, c'est juste
So yeah, we
disons,
need to see
comment en
what
fait
our
ça relève
thinking
d'une
entails.
réalité simple.
in tangible manners, and these are actually quite simple things. The idea is not to invent new things, it's actually just to do the same as is done elsewhere. But we've got a problem here because many times what's normal on other continents is not considered normal for African people. Because we say as if African people were different, we act as if they were different, but it's not the case. African people live through the same things as other. They are as human as others. And so we need just to make sure that African people have the freedom to create as much as others. They need to have the possibility to tell their stories. And others will have this possibility too. This is normal. But we should have it. We are able to imagine alterity, to talk about this. But in fact, we see that there is an imbalance in the way that we are able to produce narratives in Africa, an imbalance with the ability that people from other continents may have. This is an imbalance that is really negative for African people. So we don't want to change the world, but we want to do this little thing in the world of book production. But actually, you may see this phenomenon in other sectors for the African continent. The same goes in many other sectors. This is just a reality. Of course, this is a reality that we can trace back in time. It exists. It has existed for centuries. And there are historical reasons for this. But here we say that we need to get out of this way of doing things. And we need to make sure that we are able to accept our freedom to tell the story of the world. Our freedom also to find the means to do so. So the literary season is not a place for official narratives, it's a place for freedom, it's a place for the freedom to tell one's story, to share new imaginations. And freedom is really at the heart of this. So yes, I don't know if I've answered the question. We can't hear you very well, so I'm not sure if I answered the question right, but I try my best.
Oui, c'est parfait, Ibrahima, merci beaucoup.
Kenza, je vois qu'il y a une main levée. Peut-être une autre question.
So I see that someone raised their hand. Maybe there's another question. Go ahead, Reda.
Salut Reda.
Hi, Reda. Hi, Kenza. I don't know if I can intervene now. I just wanted to go back to what has been said already. So I just wanted to thank the International Alliance of Independent Publishers and thank you, Kenza, as well. So I tried to think about a few ideas and solutions to reduce the precariousness of intellectual work. For example, reducing the costs for independent publishers, asking for state financial help in a progressive way so that bigger publishing houses have less financial support and small ones have more. Or maybe we can take as an example the Quebec law that allows authors to have an artist status and to negotiate conditions together. That's also a solution when there's a legal issue or abuse of power. But those are just half measures, if I may say, and there's no policy that would be possible and lasting in the framework of a system that is built by colonialism and capitalism. So the relationships between the North and the South that were built in the 15th century and then extended to the whole world, imposing a people's hierarchy in the world based on various factors and criteria. So coloniality includes colonization, that is just one manifestation of a process that is still ongoing today. So if we add that to a new power scheme, such as the notion of development, coloniality rebuilds itself all the time. The South is submitted to the global order of the North. They need to agree with everything that is imposed by the North. So that's even an additional precariousness for the South authors. They are less translated, they appear less in the media, and they are less read and paid for their work. So what is experienced as precariousness by northern authors is even worse for southern authors because of coloniality. But they can all work together because it's all a question of meaning that is lost in the process. And we need to identify two enemies of critical intellectual work: capitalism and coloniality. We need to fight against those two enemies with the same strength, because as long as coloniality will dictate relationships, capitalism will also impose on them. So Reda Sadiki is an author. He wrote about the French directorate in Morocco and on coloniality as well. So thank you very much. We are still talking and sharing economic considerations. They have been clearly expressed, and I would like to give the floor to Ange Mbel to create economic value in Cameroon. So you started your current work because when you came back from your studies, you were shocked by the fact that you could not find African work, African books in your country. And so you tried to. Kenza, I cannot hear you. Okay, so Ange is going to take the floor anyway. Ange, you can go. Thank you, Kenza. Hi, Ibrahima. Well, personally, I can hear Kenza, so thank you, Kenza. Thank you, Laurence, and thank you to the Alliance of Independent Publishers, and thanks to all of you who are present here. I would just like to amend, it's not right after my studies, because the company that I have is already existed before. GVG is the abbreviation of the Grand Vide Grenier. It already existed. It's about travels and then event communication. But at some point, as a reader, I wanted to find African books, and I realized that we didn't have them in Africa. Well, if you don't have African books outside of Africa, it's not that big of a deal, but inside Africa, that's an issue. And so I went asking questions, and I realized that we cannot have book value in Africa, and librarians are the first ones not to give value to the book outside of the education system, in Cameroon at least, where I'm calling you from. In libraries, we have around 60-70% that are rather stationary stores with books coming from the West, and at maximum 10% of African books. So we did not know where to find those books. And so the question was to know how we could give value to books, because we are surrounded by readers that complain that they cannot find books and cannot read books. And then we have book specialists who don't see an economic interest in this business. So that was the main problem. So could we approach this question? If librarians do not believe in books, in general literature, we're going to make it easy. We're going to give back value to the books and to prove them that books can be economically viable and could be for them too. So what we started doing is that we started competing with them, and we started to invest to occupy public spaces. We wanted to meet the readers rather than the opposite. So we wanted to create a space where readers live, where they are with their daily habits. So they go to work, they stopped at the local shop, they shop there and there. In his free time, in their free time, then do such and such. For example, we have very popular places for Sunday free time, so popular stadiums, let's say. So the idea was to create everywhere where there were people, where there was a possible audience, a space to sell books. That's as easy as it was. So we started doing that. And it was quite paradoxical because the librarians were the last one to join our distribution network. So we started by creating competition for the librarians so that they would be interested and they would realize that books are not all about school, that in books there's also a real interest. But to be interesting, they need to be visible. And in addition to being interesting, they can also sell quite well and they can make money that way. So there can be a viable economic model. So that was the approach that we took, and we started with local shops. So where you buy fruits and vegetables, for example, we opened up book spaces in those local shops. In small supermarkets, you have book spaces today. And so this is what we did at the time. And we have sorts of bakeries that have mini supermarket spaces. So we use those as well. And eventually, librarians wondered what was going on. They wondered what was happening, and we let them join the movement. And today, we can have our voices heard because librarians realize that their neighbors might have a book that they don't have. So that's kind of shocking. So they start asking questions. They start to realize that books are interested outside of the school system as well. Quick story, by the way, until last year, I think, our librarians um, would take out everything that was literature between August and September. Between August until the end of September, beginning of October, they would take away everything that was pure literature. They would only keep educational books and stationery articles. So this year is the first year that we managed to convince local library booksellers to keep all books at all times, and that's a real success. It was a huge realization for us because they thought that it was not interesting at all. They just wanted to keep what was economically viable and what would bring them money. So we are very happy about it, and it's going quite well. They're very happy about it as well, which can be inspiring for the next back to school period in 2024. After doing that in Cameroon, we were quite like, well, I don't know if we were lucky, but the publishers with whom we work they talked about our company because they realized how valuable books were. Sometimes they did not have enough stock to respond to existing demands, so they started talking about our work in their own associations, and this led us to get out of Cameroon, well, to make Cameroon's offer bigger, first of all, because we had other books, the African books from other countries. And it also helped us extend the network. So today, in 2023, we are present in around 10 countries in Africa in three completely different monetary zones. And that's also because the question of book circulation, dissemination, the first question in Africa, without having the silver bullet, what we did is that we tried. So we try, we experiment, we test, and we are going to test with logistical means, transportation means that are not quite formal and official at the beginning. And then we try to see what works, what doesn't work. We try to learn from those lessons, and we are completely aware that it does not work every time, that it cannot work every time. But since we try 7 times with different actions, we eventually find something that does work. So today we can disseminate quite well our book catalog in those 10 countries, because we did not say, okay, oh no, we cannot do it. There's no transportation agent. Okay, there was no transportation agent, but that does not mean that the world was closed. And I'm really good at geography now because I know the limitations of each country. I can tell you that because I read maps, I looked at maps, and I looked for ways to circumvent the limitations that were economically viable. And so doing so, you kind of, if you want to serve Morocco, for example, if there's no direct flight, if it's too expensive, you need to know which countries are neighboring. You need to know if they are if there is road access, and then if there's a transition by boat, for example. So we really test all the time. And until now, we are quite proud because it's working quite well, to the extent that we thinking of opening offices in other areas to make this dissemination even easier within Africa. So that's it for my input. I don't know if I've forgotten something or if you would like me to come back on an element. It would be a pleasure. That's a very inspiring work. Thank you for sharing your experience. I wanted to ask you if you could organize a book chain, because you started by being outside of this circle. And the interpreter apologizes, but it seems that we've lost Kenza's sound. Sorry.
On a à nouveau perdu Kenza.
Ah, d'accord. Je pensais être la seule à ne pas l'entendre.
Okay, I thought that was the only one who could not hear her, sorry, but it seems that I'm not.
Oui, on va y arriver.
C'était quoi le début de sa question déjà? Sa phrase? Attends.
Que tu fais un magnifique travail.
So the beginning of her intervention is that you're doing a wonderful job. But then we couldn't hear what she was saying. So our apologies about that. I can see that time is also running by. Okay, Kenza, you can write your question if needed. Okay, Kenza, I can see that we are running out of time. So maybe if you agree, you can type down your question. Okay, so she is asking in the chat, So you've built the book chain back while stepping away. So that's the question that Kenza is asking Ange, and the answer is yes. So I was lucky when I started because I didn't hesitate. I wasn't dreaming of working in the publishing field in the beginning, but I just made an observation. There was no African book in Africa, and for me that did not make sense. So the question I had at the beginning was to know if there was an African author, and there was one. I could identify it, and so I realized that it was a missing element in the chain, which was distribution and dissemination. Publishers were publishers, distributors, booksellers, and often authors as well. So it was quite complicated for them. And by creating this book chain, and by saying, okay, we can see that there's nothing, but the question is to know what we can do. We need to act, we need to do whatever we can. And so what I could do was to focus on this missing element, and that was the basic discussion. And it's on working on dissemination that I realized that there's an issue in distribution, and there's also a lack of knowledge around the book chain as a whole. There's a lack of knowledge on how it works, theoretically speaking, at all levels, from the author to the bookseller. They don't know each other. They don't know what the other's there for. They look at each other in a weird way. And so I realized that it's not possible. We need to work hand in hand. We need to work together because we need each other. And so we started an education work. It was quite spontaneous. And I created an association too, whose objective in the margins of GVC is to explain the book chain as a whole and try to organize it to the best with the people we already work with, but mostly with the people who are considering integrating the book world. So this is what we're doing. And this year, we are very proud of this because we are working with the Douala University. And I hope that a club will be created on publishing, but not only publishing, it's rather on the whole book chain, as I said, to know how it works, how it's supposed to evolve. And I hope that we will be able, within that university, create incubators. So in Douala, that's the first incubator to allow students to practice on the book chain itself and to practice the different jobs that are supposed to be part of the book chain, because we need to identify them precisely. So I don't know if I answered your question. Yes, it's perfect. Thank you very much. That's the perfect transition to give the floor to Francisca, who's going to tell us about the strength of a collective. And so you are both going back to Javier's idea to build ecology. And Francisca, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much to Babelica organization for this work, this energy. We can see the results now. Thank you very much. My name is Francisca Muñoz. I come from Chile. I'm an architect, publisher, and cultural manager. In 2009, I started my own publishing house, Cabana, independent for architecture. And in 2013, I entered the Chilean association, and I was a vice director. And I wanted to tell you about this organization in Chile, as I was saying. and nowadays have 160 publishing house, all of them independent and from universities in Chile. It was created at the end of 1999, and in 2001 it was already legal. We formalized, we are more than 20 years, and in some of the main proposals or goals, we highlight the promotion of the international Latin American publishing house, working for exchanges. We want to democratize the book and foster cultural diversity. And from a humanistic, democratic, and plural and Latin American perspective, taking into account human rights, furthermore supporting the creation and implementing of public policies around books and reading, especially in national policy for books and libraries and reading in general. This association at the beginning was created with 7 publishing houses who belong to the book Chilean chamber, the only one at that moment where most of publishing houses were transnational and very big indeed.
Esta asociación, bueno, con todo ese, we created this association. So we started with a very ambitious work, and with the time we've welcomed on board more and more publishing houses. And as I was saying, today we are around 160 publishing houses. I just wanted to give you some figures so that you could understand what we've accomplished through the years. So 63% of the publishing houses are around 10 years old, less than 10 years old. Another important figure is that 54% of publishing houses are legally represented by a woman. Another important figure is that each publishing house is formed by an average of 4.2 people. And from those people, 60% are female workers, so women. So it is important to highlight that we've calculated these figures because out of these 160 publishing houses, only a few are big publishing houses. Only a few people there are working in big publishing companies. Around 85% of the affiliated publishing houses are people that have other job, a side job or a different job which is not linked to the book ecosystem, and they decided to create a publishing house as a side job, or they wanted to publish a new information, new wisdom through their books. So as a result, they do not have a lot of time to devote to their publishing house, and it's difficult for them to grow. I also want to talk about the amount of titles that we published. In 2021, we recorded around 8 books per publishing house. Then we increased to 30 books last year, and this year we are expecting to publish around 9.8 books per publishing house. Now I'd like to go into details and to talk about the importance of collaborative work. These small publishing houses that are formed usually by 1 or 2 people, so they devote their free time to their publishing houses. They work on weekends, for example. So how do they receive funding to publish their books? Linked to this idea, I'd like to mention something important, and it's linked to what Javier said at the beginning. The idea that sometimes we work or we write focusing on economic income. I believe that the nature of these independent publishing houses from Chile, for them it's quite the opposite, because for them it's not a business. In Chile, you cannot make a living out of a publishing house. So what does happen then? So people have to work on a different field to be able to fund the publishing house. And in Chile, there is a national policy, a free policy for libraries. And there's a program every 5 years in which we review this policy from the private and the public sector. And we work to develop that policy and to implement it. So thanks to this policy, thanks to that system, we have a chance to get together with the rest of the agents in the book field to identify the needs, what are the gaps that exist regarding reading and books. And in the last revision, in the last period, we added a new concept. Thanks to this process, we've also accomplished some good things. We still have a long road ahead, but something we've accomplished is to implement libraries in a better way. And for that, states have to buy books. And we decided that the state had to buy books in Chile to put them at readers' disposal. So thanks to that, around 60% of the state's purchases have to be from Chilean books. And we decided that because before that, it was around 20%. So purchases from the state are both for public libraries, but also for high schools and schools in the public sector, so public schools. And sometimes some schools have their own small library. So as you can imagine, they buy many books. And it is also important to understand that throughout the years, the funds for these purchases has been reduced. So we see that in the past we had more funding and there were less publishing houses. And now it's the opposite. We have less funding and we have more publishing houses, which offer a very good product, quality product. We have to say that we have seen a professionalization of publishing in Chile. Thanks to that, we've been able to improve our international image. However, here in Chile, we see that our young people and children do not have an easy access to these books coming from independent publishing houses. What is the role of the association in this sense? So we are all small publishing houses, and when we get together, we can say that we become a bigger publishing house. And that's why it's important to work in an association. In our organization, we have a directory formed by 5 different people running their own publishing houses. And then there is a group, an executive group. I'm part of that group with my colleagues, and we also have a team for communications. How can we fund our expenses? Because we have a professional team working for the association. Well, we have fees. Our members have to pay a fee. It's not a very high fee. It's a monthly fee, in fact, and we also get our fund and the funding thanks to fairs. And this is also important because besides participating in public policies, we also organize a very important fair, the Spring Book Fair. This year we've celebrated the 12th edition, and it is a opportunity for many publishing houses to participate. This year, around 172 publishing houses have participated. Not all of them belong to the association. In order to fund this event, publishing houses have to pay for their participation, but we also submit for funding from public agencies, from institutions. In order to get these funds, we need to submit our application to obtain funding or part of the funding in order to organize this event. Apart from that, we also charge a small fee to publishing houses, nothing to be compared with bigger book fairs. Thanks to that, we can fund the event itself, but also the professional team working on for the association. And we have some experience organizing fairs, so we've decided to organize smaller fairs last year. We've launched a project to organize 8 smaller fairs with a very important mission that they all had to take place in the surroundings of the capital of Chile, because the biggest part of the population in our country is located there. So we wanted to be in critical areas with these fairs. Some of them took place in the surroundings and other in the outsides of that area. So we reached people that do not have easy access to books. They cannot access libraries and books. So it's also a very important work, and this helped us to realize the lack of access to books because we reached disadvantaged uh, groups in society. They got the chance to get closer to the books, to touch them, to get impressed by the quality of the books, but they said that they didn't have the money to afford them. So we wanted to offer the books to local libraries, and we explained these people that they had the chance to go to libraries because they are free. They can access them for free, and they do not have to buy the books. They can go to the library, they can borrow them, read them, and then return them so that the other people can read them. And we believe that we still have a lot of work to do. I don't know if somebody's speaking at the same time.
Sorry to cut you off there, Francisca, but we will have to stop. Yes, I'm sorry. We lost a lot of time with my internet issues. So sorry for this. Thank you very much, Francisca, for what you have been saying. You really underlined the importance of mutual trust that you built collectively and the importance of a global ecosystem of the book. Florence, do you think that we have the time for Javier to wrap up everything in 2 minutes? Yes, really 2 minutes, because I see that people are coming in. So sorry to rush you for the end. So Javier, do you want to wrap up everything that has been said?
De acuerdo, muchas
Yes,
gracias.
of course. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to listen to everybody and to learn a lot from these important conversations. I'd like to highlight something that we see that we have in common, the goal to create spaces. I think this has been touched by all speakers. We need to create spaces that answer to different necessities, so different scales of necessity, such as censorship, political censorship and repression, economic censorship too. We also need spaces for cooperation, spaces where we can easily disseminate the work that we do. I'd also like to highlight that there is an activist dimension in of intellectual work and of publishing. And I think it's also very clear, very easy to see that intellectual work also has an economic dimension, but it also has a political dimension. I think we've heard many important ideas linked to colonialist dynamics and the logics behind capitalism. So how can we work to create a book market, but a book market which is not a economy itself or that follows the logic of business market itself, but which at the same time defends the necessity of books to be disseminated, to get to readers, to be read, and to be distributed. And I think that is also an important topic. I think it's a very important lesson to understand the book chain. We need to understand all agents involved in the book chain. And also the need to preserve the book as a mean for freedom. And I believe this is very important, how we need to be free to explain our stories, to explain ourselves, especially in those regions in the world where by history this has been a very challenging situation. We've also seen the relationship between book and the dissemination of the book with freedom. We've also talked about book diversity and publishing diversity and how that is also social diversity. And I believe that I'd like to finish by saying that how the experiences of collaboration, of association like this event are very much needed. Babelica and the International Alliance of Independent Publishers is just an example of that. And I'd like to finish by saying that if we understand that one of the most important conclusions from the session is that the different situations that are leading to the precarization of the work, to censorship and to unfairness, to the loss of biodiversity and of cultural richness, if we understand that those situations are a result of power, we need to understand that fighting against those manifestations is a legitimate way of answering to that model. And I believe that that is in one of the most important social tasks that we have to do, and something that is very legitimate from the book chain and from the book field. So I'd like to leave it there for the time being, if that's okay for you.
Merci Javier pour ces mots de conclusion. Merci à toutes et tous pour
Thank
vos
you, Javier, for these last words. Thank you, everyone. I would have liked to exchange more with you, but we didn't have enough time. We would have needed maybe 5 hours to keep on talking. So next up is another debate on independent publishing and the challenges of artificial intelligence. For others, I will suggest that we can keep on exchanging together through email. So thank you for working with us today, for being here, and good luck for what's to come during Babelica. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot to the interpreters also for their amazing work. And let's just meet again in a few minutes here for our roundtable.
À tout de suite pour la suite. Merci beaucoup.